Strange but true stories, tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. This planetary rock we call home is 4.5 billion years old. Humans have only been scurrying around on it for a blink of an eye, comparatively speaking. There are many mysteries on this planet that scientists are still pondering, like where did all the water come from, or what's really down in the Earth's core. And those are some biggies, but there are smaller mysteries that perplex us. Have you ever heard of the Well of Barhut, or as some call it, the Well of Hell in Yemen? It's 100 feet in diameter, but nobody knows exactly how deep. A very pungent odor emanates from the hole, with many locals saying it's the smell of demon entrails trapped inside. Geologists have studied it, but nothing has been discovered about its origin or reason for being. In eastern Washington, near Ellensburg, there is supposedly another hole of unknown depth. On February 1st, 1997, a caller into Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM radio show, who identified himself as Mel Waters, spoke of a hole 9 feet 9 inches in diameter near his home. Located about 2 miles from an access road on his property, he said it had a stone retaining wall around the upper edge of it that descended about 15 feet before becoming dirt and rock as far as his lights could illuminate into the hole. To Mel's neighbors, it was well known, and folks would dispose of trash, household objects, even a refrigerator apparently went down into the hole. But to his surprise, the hole never seemed to fill up. A self-described professional shark fisherman, Mel said he put weighted fishing line down into the hole hoping to discern its depth. But he kept adding and adding 5,000-foot spool after 5,000-foot spool of line into the hole. He claimed to put up to 80,000 feet of line into it without reaching the bottom of it. Now, 80,000 feet is equivalent to a little over 15 miles. He talked about the early days of his investigation into the hole's depth in his first interview with Art in February 1997.
When I let out the first 1,500 yards of line, I reeled all of that back in. Yeah. And I wanted to know if I had hit water down there, because I thought that's a lot of feet.
You bet.
That's 4,500 feet of line. Did I hit water? So I did. What I did is I sent down a roll of lifesavers.
Lifesavers?
Yeah. So when it hits the water, the lifesavers will dissolve.
That's true. Oh, I see. So very smart. So
yeah, it's an old shark fisherman's trick there. We used to send our bait out on a balloon attached to a roll of lifesavers, and the bait would go out into the ocean on the tide.
Yeah.
And then eventually the lifesavers would melt, and the bait would fall to the bottom.
Mel admitted that his method for plumbing the depths of this hole was simplistic, and wondered if something more scientific could be attempted to attain a depth. On one particular night, he spoke of bringing his dogs with him to the hole. His dogs sensed something terribly wrong within this hole.
As usual, I brought the dogs with me. They wouldn't go anywhere near the damn thing, and I went back to the Suburban and hung out over there. So it was kind of if I try to bring them there on a leash, they'll just dig their feet in. They do not want to go anywhere near them.
Speaking of dogs, there was even a story told to him by one of his neighbors, apparently, of a local hunter whose dog passed away, and the owner tossed the body of the canine into the hole. The hunter claimed that the dog returned sometime later, discovering his resurrected dog with the same markings and collar and tags as he remembered it having when he tossed its lifeless body down the hole. That was most of the information that came out on that first call on February 1st, 1997 into Art's show. A few nights later, Art revisited the mystery of Mel's hole after receiving a fax from Mel about a strange development in the story. Apparently, a certain group of people heard Mel's telling of the hole located in his backyard, and a military unit was dispatched to the area and secured it. When Mel drove up to the area to inquire what was going on, He was told by a military person there had been a plane crash and nobody was allowed into the area. Perplexed, Mel asked,
"Well, where's the smoke? I've seen plane crashes before. There's got to be smoke." And again, I had talked to the officer in charge there, and I figured, one of these military types would come up, and I don't know, maybe he was just dressed in civilian clothes because of the nature of what happened there. But he told me that I won't be able to go out there until the accident's been investigated. And I was insistent about my property rights, and he seemed to indicate that this might not necessarily be my property in regards to the drug lab. So, but the problem is, I do have a sort of a lab on the property.
Wait, drug lab? At this point, Art had to break in and get some clarity on this drug lab comment.
You have a sort of lab? What kind of lab?
Well, I work working in the alternative health field here and on the property, and that's one of the reasons, and this can all come out now. I imported some plant life from northern Nevada. They were Native American plants that the Indians used there for treatment of various illnesses, mostly cold and flu.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we, because of the nature of the climate, and it's very similar to northern Nevada, we thought we would cultivate these plants and then use it as a cure. It's a very effective cure.
It's not a narcotic, is it?
No, it's not narcotics.
Well, then what the hell are they talking about drug lab?
Well, there is a lab there, though. I mean, and
but there's no. You're not cranking out crank or methamphetamine or anything.
Yeah, but if they had, for instance, if they found like it was a drug lab, they could seize my property.
So the old, if you don't cooperate, we're going to expose the lab you got as an illegal drug lab and take your stuff. Then he spoke of an unusual phone call from a real estate agent, speaking of a very generous offer from an unknown buyer for his piece of property. At the time of his second call, he had not made a decision about whether to fight the government or to take the money from the anonymous offer. During this second visit with Art, Mel mentioned between the first call and the second that he had visited with an elderly gentleman who had lived in the area for many years, who told him the area around the hole looked different a while back.
Originally, and this is going way back, so this must go back about 40, 50, maybe longer, that there was a series of, around the hole, there was a series of stone columns. I said, stone columns? And
stone columns?
Yeah. And so I asked him, could he I sketched out a little how the property looks there and see if he could place the stone columns on it.
Yeah.
So, he drew it on the napkin there, and I said, that's very interesting. Well, I had my power book with me, and I pulled up a picture of Stonehenge.
Yeah.
He says, that's exactly what the thing looked like.
You're kidding.
He said that they had these, pillars lined up, and just like that.
Mel mentioned another conversation with a neighbor who mentioned to him that a peculiar black beam had emitted from the hole one night. He wrote about his neighbor's experience in the facts to Art prior to his second appearance on the radio show. Here's Art reading part of that fax.
Oh, I talked to one of my neighbors earlier today, and he told me something very interesting. He said that some time ago, he was driving up to the hole at night and thought he saw the most bizarre thing. He said he saw a beam of solid black coming out of the then uncovered hole. I said, what do you mean? He said he saw something blacker than black coming out of the hole, like a searchlight reaching into the sky as far as he could see.
Waters made later appearances on Coast to Coast AM in 2000 and 2002, revealing that payments by federal officials for his property allowed him to move to Australia. So, what to make of Mel's hole? You can draw your own conclusions, but here are a few of my impressions. Do deep holes exist around the world? Yes, the Well of Barhoot mentioned in the open is a real thing, but a suspected depth of only about 600 feet. It does not compare to the 15-mile deep hole purported by Mel. The deepest known cavern is just over 7,000 feet deep. The deepest known mine is less than 13,000 feet deep. And the Russians drilled the deepest borehole to 40,230 feet in 1989. Geologists say a hole of the depth that Mel talked about would collapse in on itself under tremendous pressure and heat. Next, Mel said in his original interview with Art that he was married to a woman who worked at the local college, which would be Central Washington University, and that she was in the geology department. I don't know, if you were married to a geologist, wouldn't you have her and her colleagues surveying this geological anomaly in your backyard? And Art's insistence on rallying his listeners in the Pacific Northwest to journey out to the hole, to lower themselves into it, or help Mel fight the government intrusion upon his property always seemed to get sloughed off by him as he redirected Art to other aspects of the hole. And then there was Gerald Osborne, also known as Red Elk, who told many people and the media that he had visited the deep hole on Mel's property for years, going back to 1961 when his father had showed it to him. Yet when he was tasked with leading 30 people to investigate it, he was unable to locate it. No independent source has ever been able to find the hole or confirm its existence. But in 2012, the Ellensburg Daily Record did a story on what they believed was the inspiration behind the story. Geologist Jack Powell, who worked at Central Washington University for 11 years, found a deep mine shaft on the Menashtash Ridge in Ellensburg. It had been cordoned off by barbed wire, and he dropped a few rocks in. He estimated this particular shaft at the time was only about 90 feet deep, but may have been as deep as 300 feet when it was active. Still, there are many who continue the search for the 80,000 feet deep hole in and around Ellensburg, keeping the legend of Mel's Hole alive today. This has been another strange but true story. Let us know what you think of Mel's Hole in the comments below. Though I imagine there will be numerous puns and jokes added in the comments. I'll admit it, that when I listened back to Art Bell's original shows, I found myself laughing a couple of times at the unintentional puns. Anyway, comment below if you like. Subscribe and sign up for notifications. That's always helpful. Thanks to those who already have. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us of a strange, paranormal, hard-to-wrap-your-head-around story, well, send it to us in an email to strangebutTrueStories2@gmail.com. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Steve White. Until next time.